The first time it happened, I thought it was an accident. I came out of my kitchen that crisp March morning, coffee in hand, and froze at the sight before me. My mailbox, the one that had stood at the edge of my yard for decades like a loyal sentinel, lay shattered in the muddy grass. Letters, envelopes, and flyers were strewn across the frost-bitten lawn, fluttering in the weak sunlight like tiny white flags of surrender. At first, I rubbed my eyes, convinced I was seeing things. No way, I muttered under my breath. I had seen wind topple fences, kids accidentally kick soccer balls into hedges, even a drunk driver clipped the corner of my garage once, but a mailbox? Flattened. Destroyed. Almost surgically. I knelt in the mud, gingerly picking up a torn letter addressed to me in faded black ink. The edges were jagged, and the corner of the envelope had been crushed to an unreadable pulp. My stomach tightened. Whoever did this had intention. That's when Sarah Langston appeared. "Morning, David," she called, her voice carrying across the quiet suburban street. She was walking her small terrier, Daisy, who yipped in curiosity at the wreckage. Sarah was petite, mid-30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a ponytail that swung like a pendulum as she walked. She stopped a few feet away, tilting her head in confusion. "I swear it wasn't me," she said quickly, lifting her hands in mock surrender. "Maybe the wind?" I chuckled nervously, brushing mud off my gloves. "Wind doesn't leave splinters like this," I muttered, frustration creeping in. Sarah's expression shifted from concern to faint amusement. "Well, maybe it's time for a new mailbox. One of those fancy metal ones. Indestructible." I laughed a little, though my laugh sounded hollow even to me. "Yeah. Maybe," I replied, standing to survey the damage. Deep down, I knew it wasn't the wind, and I knew it wasn't an accident. Over the next few days, I tried to push the incident from my mind, rationalizing it as a freak accident. But when Tuesday rolled around, I stepped outside to get the morning paper, and my heart sank. The mailbox was gone again, reduced to splinters and twisted wood. At that point, I knew it wasn't random. Someone was targeting me. The pattern became terrifyingly clear. Every week, without fail, my mailbox would be destroyed. Sometimes it was a complete flattening, other times just a diagonal crack through the post, letters spilling in a haphazard mess. I began to dread Mondays, waiting for the familiar, sinking feeling of seeing my mailbox in ruins. At first, I suspected pranksters, teenagers testing their limits, maybe the kind that roamed neighborhoods at dusk. But the attacks weren't haphazard. They were precise. Intentional. Calculated. Whoever was doing this knew exactly when I would check the mail. Whoever it was, they seemed to enjoy the timing almost as much as the act itself. I began keeping watch, first from the living room window, then standing behind my front door like a sentinel. I would sip my coffee, pretending to read the newspaper, eyes darting to the street every few seconds. Shadows stretched across lawns. Cars rolled past. Kids laughed at the corner store. But no one touched my mailbox. Until Thursday. It was dusk, the sky painted in bruised purples and deep oranges. I was leaning against the kitchen counter, coffee mug in hand, when I saw her. A small figure, red hair pulled back tightly into a ponytail, appeared at the end of my driveway. She moved with precision, almost choreographed, like a dancer preparing for the final act. Jeans and a faded gray hoodie clung to her frame, and in her hands was a baseball bat. She didn't hesitate. She raised the bat, and with a swing that seemed more ritual than violence, she slammed it into my mailbox. The wood cracked. Splinters flew into the air, and letters scattered like confetti in the fading light. And just as suddenly as she had arrived, she vanished into the shadows. My heart pounded in my chest. The adrenaline made my fingers shake. I wanted to run after her, to confront this red-haired phantom, but something about her confidence, the eerie precision, froze me in place. That night, sleep came fitfully. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. Who was she? Why me? And why did it feel as if the mailbox weren't the target at all, but something else entirely, my reaction, my patience, my pride? By Friday morning, I had decided on a plan. The next mailbox would not be made of wood. Not cheap plastic. Not anything she could bend, crush, or smash. I needed steel. Thick, industrial-grade steel. Bulletproof, unyielding, permanent. I went to the hardware store and explained my situation to Hank Patterson, a local welder with a grizzled face and hands like shovels. He squinted at me, assessing my story as if it might be insane. "You're serious, huh?" he asked, stroking his beard. "Absolutely," I said. "I want it indestructible." Together, we designed a steel post anchored deep into the ground, welded the box itself shut with heavy-duty hinges, and secured it with concrete. By the time we finished, the mailbox gleamed in the sunlight like a fortress. It wasn't just a piece of metal, it was a statement. Let her try now. I stood back and examined our work. The steel reflected the morning sun, unyielding, sharp, almost aggressive in its perfection. I felt a strange thrill, a mix of satisfaction and apprehension. This mailbox was not just a receptacle for letters, it was a challenge. A dare. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control. But I also knew one thing with absolute certainty: she would be back. And when she came, she would be more determined than ever. I could feel it in the stillness of the street, in the way the wind whispered through the oaks, in the almost palpable tension hanging over my lawn. The game had begun, and I was ready to play. Monday arrived with a quiet tension that gnawed at my nerves like a rat at a frayed rope. The steel mailbox gleamed in the morning sun, standing tall and unyielding at the edge of my yard, a silent monument to my determination and, I realized, to hers. I made coffee and tried to read the newspaper, but my eyes kept flicking to the window, watching the street, the sidewalks, even the tops of the fences in the neighbor's yard. Every leaf that rustled in the breeze, every car that passed, set my heart racing. Nothing happened all morning. By noon, the calm felt almost unnatural. The street, usually dotted with runners, joggers, and kids on scooters, was empty. Even the birds seemed cautious, hopping in little bursts, silent and wary. My phone vibrated with texts from Sarah Langston, who was checking in like she always did. "Everything okay?" she asked. I typed back quickly. "Yes. Just quiet." By mid-afternoon, I was pacing my living room, gripping my mug so tightly it left impressions on my palm. And then I saw her. She appeared at the far end of the driveway, her red ponytail bobbing with precise rhythm. The faded gray hoodie clung to her frame, darkened with dampness from the afternoon drizzle. Her jeans were streaked with mud, and in her hand, the baseball bat gleamed like a weapon straight out of a noir film. She stopped, standing a few feet from the mailbox, and studied it. My chest tightened. I wanted to confront her, shout, demand to know why, but the words caught in my throat. She wasn't just attacking, she was assessing, circling it like a predator studying its prey. I grabbed my phone, set it to record, and leaned out the window a fraction, careful not to make myself obvious. She lifted a rock first, small but heavy, testing the steel post with careful, deliberate throws. Each time, it bounced harmlessly off the metal, clanging loudly against the box in a sharp, almost musical echo. She swore softly under her breath, a low hiss of frustration that made my stomach twist. Then, almost in slow motion, she swung the bat. The first strike rang out like a pistol shot, bouncing sparks where the metal met the wood core inside. Strike after strike, she hammered the mailbox, her movements precise, almost rhythmic. I felt a strange thrill as I watched her. For weeks, I had imagined this confrontation, yelling, threats, maybe even a chase. But now that it was real, I realized it wasn't about fear. It wasn't about anger. It was about endurance. She was testing me. I could feel it. She paused mid-swing, panting, stepping back, her chest heaving. Then she spoke, softly, almost to herself. "Why do you even care?" The question stopped me cold. Her voice wasn't loud or accusatory, it was curious, searching, even a little wounded. I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. I don't know," I stammered. I can't let it happen." She laughed, a strange sound that was half amusement, half exasperation. "You think it's just a mailbox?" Her eyes, glinting in the dimming light, seemed to bore into me. It's never just a mailbox. It's control. It's respect. It's persistence. You'll see. She swung the bat one last time and dropped it to the ground, stepping back with her hands on her hips. For a long moment, she just stared at the mailbox, and then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she turned and walked into the shadows. I stayed frozen, my phone still recording, unsure whether to run after her or just watch her vanish into the dark. The street was empty again, silent except for the faint patter of rain on the asphalt. I felt an unexpected mixture of relief and frustration. Relief that she hadn't broken the mailbox. Frustration at the mystery that now hung over me heavier than the clouds above. The rest of the week was tense, almost unbearable. I installed a small security camera in the yard, hoping for some clue, some proof. I watched the recordings obsessively, shadows, leaves, cars, but no figure in red. The tension gnawed at my chest. My imagination began to run wild, constructing scenarios of what she might do next, how far she might go. Then came Monday morning, and with it, a note. Taped neatly to the mailbox, written in jagged, hurried letters. You're stronger than I thought. Good. But don't get too comfortable. I stared at it for a long time, the words etched into my brain like a warning or a challenge. My first instinct was to feel anger, to crumple it and throw it away. But instead, I felt something else. A strange surge of pride. She had noticed. She had recognized the effort I had put into defending my mailbox. And in doing so, she had acknowledged me, as if saying, "You're worthy of this duel." For the next several days, I became hyper-aware of everything. My neighbors probably thought I had lost my mind. I scanned the street constantly, timing every passing car, noting every shadow that moved suspiciously across lawns. Every gust of wind, every stray squirrel, became a potential warning sign. And yet, despite the fear, despite the tension, I began to understand her a little. Whoever she was relentless. She didn't quit. She didn't stumble. Every strike, every attempt, was precise and purposeful. And somewhere, behind the swings and the laughter, behind the glint of mischief in her eyes, there was a message. A test. A challenge. By Friday evening, curiosity had overtaken my fear. I couldn't just watch passively anymore. I had to know. I stepped outside, cautious, keeping a safe distance. I wanted to confront her, but I also wanted to be ready for anything. The mailbox, now shining like a fortress in the late sun, waited with me. Then, as if summoned by my thoughts, she appeared. Her red hair glinted even in the dim light, her ponytail bouncing as she approached with that same deliberate stride. She stopped, her eyes locking on the mailbox and then sliding toward me. For the first time, she didn't attack. She simply stood there, a figure caught between shadow and light, watching and waiting. "Why do you keep doing this?" I asked finally, my voice steady despite the adrenaline in my veins. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she tilted her head, studying me with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. Finally, she said, softly, "Because it matters. Because someone has to notice. Because someone has to care." The words struck me harder than the bat ever could. I realized then that this wasn't just about destruction. It wasn't about vandalism or anger or revenge. It was about attention, persistence, and challenge. And in some strange, twisted way, she had brought me to life. She had forced me to build, to endure, to watch, and to care. I didn't know her name. I didn't know her story. But I knew one thing: the game had changed. She wasn't just a vandal. She was a catalyst, a mirror, a reminder of something I had long forgotten: how far a person could go to challenge another, and how much they could learn when faced with unyielding persistence. I watched her disappear into the shadows again, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt anticipation. The game had begun in earnest, and I was ready. Weeks passed. The mailbox remained unbroken, a gleaming fortress of steel anchored deep into the ground. Strike after strike, rock after bat, nothing dented it. I would stand by my window at all hours, watching, waiting, almost expecting her to appear at any moment. And yet, the street stayed quiet for days at a time. The absence was almost worse than her attacks. Each time I checked the mailbox, I half expected her to be there, half hoped she wouldn't be. The tension became a constant hum in my chest, like a low drumbeat I couldn't escape. Sleep was difficult. Even the sound of rain pattering against the roof made my heart jump. Every shadow in the yard became suspect. Every passerby a potential red-haired figure in disguise. And then, one rainy evening, she appeared. Unlike before, she didn't rush. She didn't charge at the mailbox with her bat. She walked slowly, deliberately, letting the droplets of rain soak her clothes, letting the mud smear along the edges of her jeans. She stopped at the edge of the yard and simply stared. Her gaze didn't linger on the mailbox alone, it shifted, almost weighing me, as if measuring my patience, my resolve, my very character. I stepped outside, keeping a cautious distance, the mud squelching beneath my boots. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice calm but tight, holding all the frustration, fear, and curiosity I had been bottling for weeks. Her eyes, sharp and glinting in the rain, fixed on me. For a moment, it felt like she could see straight through me, reading my fears, my pride, my obsession with the mailbox. "Because it needed to be done," she said finally, her voice quiet but fierce. "People like you, people like this neighborhood, get too comfortable. You forget that someone, somewhere, is fighting. Someone has to push back, make a mark, test limits. That's all I've been doing." I frowned, unsure if she was mocking me or teaching me a lesson. "Fighting, with a mailbox?" I asked, feeling a strange mix of incredulity and awe. She shook her head, water running down her cheeks. "It's not about the mailbox. It's about persistence. About challenging someone to see if they'll endure, if they'll resist, if they'll build something better instead of giving up." Her gaze softened, just slightly, and I realized that beneath the defiance, there was purpose, even pride. For the first time, I understood. This had never been vandalism, not really. It was a test, a silent duel conducted week after week, a push and pull of patience, creativity, and endurance. And I had passed. I had built something that could not be broken. Something that reflected my determination and resilience. I didn't realize, I admitted, my voice shaking slightly. I thought you were just angry, or..." She raised a hand, cutting me off gently. "Anger is easy. Destruction is easy. But endurance? That's rare. You built this," she gestured to the steel mailbox gleaming under the rain, "and you didn't give up. That matters. That's why I came." A strange silence stretched between us, broken only by the rain drumming on the roof and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. The tension that had dominated the last few weeks began to dissolve, replaced by something unfamiliar, understanding. Mutual recognition. The unspoken acknowledgement of a shared obsession and stubbornness. I looked at her, really looked, for the first time. She was no longer just a red-haired mystery in a hoodie. She was a challenger, a mirror reflecting something in me I hadn't faced in years: tenacity, vigilance, and the quiet satisfaction of having someone push me to be better. "I'm sorry," I said finally, the words tasting strange but honest. "I misjudged you." She smiled, a real smile this time, one that reached her eyes. "And I misjudged you. I thought you'd cave. Thought you'd throw in the towel after the first week." Her voice softened. "But you didn't. You built something stronger. And that's rare." She stepped closer, tilting her head slightly. "Maybe we're similar," she said quietly. I didn't respond immediately. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. We weren't enemies. We weren't vandals or victims. We were participants in an unspoken challenge, a silent test of patience, willpower, and resilience. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The rain fell steadily, cold and relentless, but it felt cleansing rather than oppressive. I realized then that the steel mailbox wasn't just a barrier against her, it was a monument to endurance, a symbol that some things, some efforts, were worth protecting, worth fighting for. Finally, she bent down and picked up the baseball bat she had left at the edge of the yard. She held it in both hands for a moment, as if acknowledging its significance, then placed it on the ground beside the mailbox. A gesture of peace. "I won't be back," she said quietly, standing upright. "At least, not like this." Her gaze lingered on the mailbox once more before she turned and disappeared down the street, her red hair disappearing into the dim glow of the streetlights. I stood there for a long time, staring at the mailbox, feeling the rain soak through my clothes. It had survived everything she had thrown at it. But more than that, I had survived. And in the process, I had learned something far more valuable than the strength of steel or the resilience of wood. I had learned about patience, endurance, and the strange, unspoken lessons that life sometimes delivers in the form of a red-haired stranger with a bat. The next morning, I checked the mailbox again. Nothing. No note, no marks, no signs of attack. Just the gleaming steel post, upright and strong, reflecting the morning sun. It felt almost sacred. I ran my hand along the cool surface and felt a strange sense of gratitude, not for the mailbox itself, but for the lessons it represented. Weeks later, the street returned to its normal rhythm. Kids played on sidewalks. Neighbors mowed lawns. Mail carriers delivered letters without incident. Yet every time I walked past the mailbox, I thought of her. The quiet, persistent challenger who had refused to give up, who had tested me and forced me to meet her, not with anger, but with endurance. It was strange, almost poetic, that someone I had never known and would likely never see again could leave such an impression. I realized that the mailbox was never about letters, about vandalism, or about a game. It was about connection, about challenge, and about the unexpected lessons life throws at you when you least expect them. Sometimes, when the wind rustled through the trees or the sun hit the mailbox just right, I could almost imagine her standing there, a silent smile on her face, nodding in approval at what I had built. And I would smile back, knowing that we had both won, in our own ways, in a game neither of us had started but both of us had finished. The steel mailbox remained, untarnished, unbroken, a testament to resilience. But the story it held, the story of the red-haired girl who wouldn't quit, who challenged me to be stronger, who refused to surrender, would stay with me forever. And in that quiet, enduring memory, I found a strange, lasting peace.